Welcome to our first installment of Cup of Coffee with Colliers, a series of brief interviews with business and industry leaders throughout the Gulf South, where we just, have a conversation in the time that it would take to have a cup of coffee in the break room with your colleagues. So, with that, I'll get straight into it and introduce our first guest. And there's a reason he's our first guest. There's a reason that we have him on now. We'll talk about that in a minute. But first and foremost, I'd like to welcome Grady Fitzpatrick, Chief Business Development Officer with GNO Inc. Grady's a Boston College graduate, got his MBA from Georgia State with a concentration in real estate. He's also been recognized 3 times by Consultant Connect as a top 50 economic developer in North America. So welcome, Grady, and thank you for agreeing to be our first test subject here on this new format.
Yeah, thanks, Chris. Looking forward to it. I appreciate you having me on as your first guest.
Good. Well, so first of all, let's just get right into it. You were with GNO Inc. and then you left and went into private business, and now you're back with GNO Inc. So, what is the new role and what personally will you be responsible for at GNO Inc.?
Yeah, so it's been exciting. I've been here back for about a month, and the role is similar. Really, at Grady Fitzpatrick, our job is to create a thriving economy for everyone. And when we talk about business development, that's recruiting new industry into the region, diversifying industries. Obviously, New Orleans at our region has really been an oil and gas and a tourism economy. How do we bring in new high-paying jobs and really jobs and industries that, our entire workforce can be involved in? So that's really the focus. Also, workforce development falls under me, and just working on overall marketing initiatives to get the brand of New Orleans and Greater New Orleans out into really across the globe.
So, as a follow-up to that, since you were there, you left and you came back, what's the same at GNO Inc. and what's different at GNO Inc. now?
So we've got an influx of new partners, new financial resources. There's been numerous, federal programs for NGOs and nonprofits and other agencies to go after sort of emerging industries. And so that's been exciting. That's been really the biggest change, is just kind of an influx of resources, both on the personnel and financial side, to really truly diversify the economy.
And look, so previously in your private sector role, you worked with Maxis Advisors. What's different about working in the private sector? What did you learn from the private sector that you can carry forward back into the public sector now that you're back with GNO Inc.?
Yeah, it was a interesting transition because the work is very similar. At Maxis, we are a site selection firm, helping companies identify kind of the optimal location for a manufacturing facility, R&D, or office. A lot of the other real estate groups, Colliers has a team similar to the work I was doing at Maxis. I refer to it kind of as, in economic development, you're focused on a specific geography. When you're on the private side, you're really working with the company, economic development without borders, right? You're just, any municipality, any state or region is open for those companies if it makes sense and the data proves that's the right place for them. But really just learned a lot about what other communities are doing. Some being very, very aggressive with their incentives, some tightening up incentives, realizing, okay, we don't have to incentivize some of these, medium-sized companies because we've got growth, we've got talent coming in, we've got the workforce. So it really opened my eyes to, you hear anecdotally from when you're in the economic development world, but to actually interface with these other economic development groups, interface with other companies that maybe, wouldn't have considered Louisiana. Now I've kind of got a little bit more of an inside understanding of, how other communities are thinking. But most importantly, what are those companies thinking? Just being able to work with a diverse set of clients. And I will say, one of the really interesting things was the importance of a strong economic development group. I think your colleagues in the real estate, team would understand that when you have a strong economic development team, it makes everyone's job easier. It makes the companies feel more comfortable, as well as getting the right information, to the site consultants, to the real estate team, as well as to the company. So, I feel a little more armed It's always good to sort of be on the other side to see, what's making those projects tick.
No, that's great. I mean, and one thing I think we kind of missed going into this with the introductions is we talked a little bit about, but you brought up geography. And so, GNOA covers a 10 parish region, surrounding the New Orleans area, but specifically, what are those parishes that it covers? So what's your specific geography now?
Yeah. So, for those not as familiar with New Orleans and kind of the region, New Orleans is really the hub, sits right on the river. So we cover, in which we call Orleans Parish. You have Jefferson Parish as you head west, and then what we call the river region, which is St. Charles, St. John, and St. James Parish. A lot of the industrial activity along the river. Then going more downriver toward the Gulf, it's St. Bernard Parish and Plaquemines Parish. A lot of port activity as well. And then what we call the North Shore. So on the other side of the lake, Lake Pontchartrain, we have St. Tammany Parish, Washington Parish, and Tangipahoa Parish. All have different, different values, different industries that are driving them. And it's nice on our part because we have a diverse set of counties and parishes to sell.
Hey, you mentioned, again, in your comment earlier, you mentioned, kind of in keeping with the geography theme here. I mean, New Orleans has always been kind of the cultural center of the Gulf South, but we're known maybe outside the Gulf South more for food and fun, not necessarily business. You talked a little bit about in your private sector business being able to kind of benchmark us and stack us up against other jurisdictions that are doing economic development. So how do we stack up, and what do we truly have to offer here in New Orleans to businesses and that are either looking to grow or to expand into this market?
Well, I mean, I think you're spot on with sort of the perception of New Orleans, which is somewhat based in reality. I mean, we've pitched ourselves as a tourist destination for decades, and been able to drive a very successful convention and tourism industry, but never have done a really good job marketing ourselves as, a business hub. And so, people just don't think about, outside of oil and gas, they just don't think of New Orleans as really a place to do business. When in actuality, there's a lot of value in terms of, just mentioning briefly before, the industrial hub. If you're serving middle America, the Mississippi River, and the port of New Orleans, and the port of all of our ports, there's no better place to serve that market. If you look at any sort of manufacturing goods, consumer goods, a lot of that, our pipeline infrastructure with feedstock, again, really no better place. If you look at a map of the different pipelines around the country, bringing in those important materials. You've got a NASA facility building the mission to Mars and beyond. No one knows about that. You could do, man on the street interviews, and I would think a lot of the residents don't even realize that, NASA has a building that's 43 acres under a roof. I mean, it's pretty amazing when you're out there. So, and like I mentioned, a lot of our work now is in kind of future energy, renewables, offshore wind. A lot of our skill sets in that oil and gas and manufacturing transferred to kind of these new industries. We've got aggressive incentives around software development. So a lot of, strong business aspects and attributes of New Orleans and the region that, just really haven't been marketed. And that's our job, is to go out and highlight and pitch to companies why you should be doing business in the greater New Orleans region.
Yeah, I think we have a really unique opportunity in front of us in the fact that we do have the Super Bowl coming in 2025. We have the new Louisiana International Terminal, the new container port that's going to be built starting into going under construction in 2025. The first phase scheduled to be open in 2028. How do we leverage that? Because we are getting a lot of publicity now. How do we leverage it and turn it into business? Is there a plan that encompasses that?
Yeah, people ask, how's it being back at GNOA? Again, I'll say probably the most exciting and the most, the thing that gets me jazzed in the morning is the opportunity that the Super Bowl brings. The Super Bowl has changed so much since the last time we've had it in 10 years. And I think the NFL just continues to surge in popularity. but, we don't want to miss the opportunity. So while there's, a lot of great stuff happening kind of on the tourism front, we're working internally to develop campaigns around exactly what, I've kind of been mentioning and you've mentioned is the business side of New Orleans. So we're going to run some physical ads, some digital ads. We're going to really, this is an audience that will be on the street that, people pay big money, right, to sort of have an ad campaign. And we don't want to miss that opportunity to sort of, highlight the things that make New Orleans special around the business side. So, is that a picture of the NASA facility and the rockets? It's our innovation culture. It's our resiliency. I think people think of New Orleans, they still have pictures of hurricanes and floods. And, we have a $15 billion levee system. We're probably the most protected coastal city in the country. We've got a coastal master plan that really no other city or I would say state has to minimize the effects of natural disasters and hurricanes. So highlighting those things, getting people to change their mindset. Obviously, they're here for the Super Bowl, but you reinforce ads, you follow up with them. Digital is so powerful. And so we're excited about kind of launching that campaign. And again, you mentioned the terminal. We are a port city. That's why, we were purchased and for this small port. And I think that's a really exciting, our core of New Orleans is pretty much landlocked. And so, you've got a port right next to the city. You drive along the port of New Orleans. There's beautiful homes on the other side of the levee and the retaining walls, but there's no room for a big distribution center or advanced manufacturing. So I think that's, super exciting and will drive a lot of economic activity over the next, decade plus.
So a couple more quick questions before we go. What specific types of industries do you feel like today where can we grow? What are the things that we're missing today other than just like you talked about, the space industry, offshore wind technology, those things, carbon capture? What are we missing? What else is there? What can New Orleans offer?
Yeah, I mean, just building off the port discussion, we, as most markets, do not have a lot of industrial space. What we call kind of value-added manufacturing, there's not a ton of it happening. So when stuff comes into our ports, it's really just getting on a rail car or getting on a truck and leaving. A huge opportunity for our region and for the state is to take those, inputs that are those imports. Maybe it's assembly, maybe it's light manufacturing, maybe it's, more, heavy manufacturing, but the ability to add value to those products and then distribute them. So you've got sort of another layer in that supply chain that are really good paying jobs. You've also got the distribution in the warehouses, which, we lack as well. So the value added manufacturing is, I see a huge opportunity for us. You've touched on the renewables. I do think, New Orleans is a place to live, that remote workforce, tech before COVID, tech was a big focus and it still is. I think there's opportunity around tech, but there's also an opportunity to capture some of that, remote workforce. And I think, from just a office perspective, we've got really, as our office space is some of the most affordable for a city our size in the country. And, sort of these professional jobs for, back office, those types of jobs, we don't have a ton of, but I think we know that if there's a talent base there for them and the costs really can't be beat, anywhere in the country.
Yeah, look, I think at Colliers, it's a lot of the same reason why we opened an office here. I mean, we looked at the market, we looked at the opportunity, especially on the industrial side with distribution, underbuilt market, a lot of opportunity for developers to come in and, do regional facilities, maybe on the North Shore, more last mile stuff on the South Shore, assembly, manufacturing, all of those are a lot of the reasons why we chose to put a full service office here. But my last question to you, I'm going to put you a little bit on the spot. and I'm going to ask you, looking into your crystal ball, tell me what does New Orleans look like in 10 years in terms of business? And then what does the North Shore look like? What do the river parishes look like? What does downriver look like? And what does, let's say Jefferson Parish look like 10 years from now?
I think if I look at downriver, so we're talking, Plaquemines and St. Bernard. Plaquemines has one of the largest industrial projects, Venture Global, an LNG facility. I mean, it's a whole city being built down there. I see continued growth, in that segment in Plaquemines. St. Bernard, I see, the new terminal will go there. So, I mean, St. Bernard will be transformed, I think wages, jobs, opportunities. I also see sort of St. Bernard will become an extension of sort of New Orleans and Bywater, French Quarter. I mean, I think that'll be much more of there'll be a residential component of St. Bernard that'll be, really just blend with New Orleans. If you look at New Orleans and Jefferson, I think the goal, right, is to create really the urban core and connect it better with public transportation, more housing, but you've got more of a thriving downtown with what's happening at Charity with Tulane and a bioscience hub, a tech hub. And I see Jefferson, they're really putting a lot of efforts into creating, just a quality of life, sort of improving the connectivity, the walkability of Jefferson, so we'd love to sort of see this where you're not even sure, are you in Orleans or Jefferson? Does it matter? It sort of all offers, a high quality of life and job opportunities. The river region is going to continue to thrive. I mean, we're seeing billion-dollar projects up and down the river. And so it's a matter of building that in the right way, making sure, those facilities are, respectful to the neighborhood interests, but also offering those high paying jobs. And the North Shore, I think is probably the most, it's got the most growth potential. I think it's been, sort of a hidden gem for us. When I think of St. Tammany, you've got that distribution corridor where there's, R&D, light manufacturing. It's a logistical hub right now. And so it can only grow. And then that campus environment for office, they've got some really, I think that would go up against others in the country, but it needs to be sold. And I think those regional headquarters like a Chevron or Rain CII, those oil and gas companies have discovered that, but how do we sort of bring in more opportunities to St. Tammany, Tangi and Washington as well? Like there's strong manufacturing distribution opportunities there with a good quality of life. I mean, I think you look across the region and that's why, it's a awesome place to live. It's a manageable region, but there's just still, I think, untapped potential for really all different. We can really offer anything to any company, whether it's office or industrial, across the region. So, and to end with that, I think our region, if you look at, Houston, Atlanta, I mean, those regions, it's one big city, right? You sort of refer to it as Atlanta, you refer to it as Houston, and those population centers as big as our entire state. So we need to think regionally. We need to really think statewide, and continue to kind of grow and make sure, like again, our mission is a high quality of life and a thriving economy, making sure we have those high paying jobs, which then, drive new housing and new industry coming in to tap into that tap pipeline.
Well, great. Anything else you want to state before we go?
I would just, from a Colliers entry into the market is just, thank Colliers because we haven't had a national firm that's made, I think made the commitment to the region. And I'm super excited. I think it's going to be great for Colliers, but it's also going to be great for us to sort of tap into your, global network. And, I'm excited to kind of see the partnership grow and what you guys are going to bring, and sort of, I think, changing a little perceptions of the market. Oh, Colliers is, first mover. It's just really exciting for us to have you guys here. So we appreciate it.
Well, thank you. I mean, there's a strong reason why we're here, and it is the fundamentals of the opportunity in front of us. And so, thank you. I appreciate you recognizing that. So, with that, we'll wrap it up. Grady, again, thank you so much. Welcome back. Welcome back to GNO Inc. and welcome back to economic development in the market. And thank you so much for being our first our first guest on Cup of Coffee with Colliers. There'll be more of these to come. So, thank you again. And with that, thanks.